All right, for today, April 7th, Tuesday, we are going to be reading The Moon book by Gail Gibbons. And there's actually going to be a second read of this book soon, so we are only going to read pages 1 through 9 and 20 through 27 because those sections are going to focus on the phases of the moon the phases of the moon is what we're going to focus on in the second read. So we're only focusing on the information about the moon, and that's what our task is going to ask about. So we are just focusing on the pages that are going to help us with our task today. And as always, I strongly suggest you check out Class Dojo, where it has the full list of our vocabulary words from this unit that we have talked about so far. But today, day 16, we are adding 3 new words. So we are adding astronomers, satellite, and reflects. So those are going to be added to our vocabulary today. And so, The Moon Book by Gail Gibbons. As the sun sets at the end of each day, the sky becomes darker and darker. On many clear nights, our moon shines brightly in the night sky. Our moon is the brightest and biggest light in our night sky. It outshines all the stars and planets, which appear as small points of light. Some planets have many moons. Earth has one. So a star burns gases that give off heat and light. The sun is a star. A planet reflects sunlight and revolves around the sun. Earth is a planet. So, what is the difference between a star and a planet? Tell your family what the difference between a star and a planet. So, what is the sun? Is the sun a star or a planet? And what is Earth? Is Earth a star or a planet? And how many moons does Earth have? Our moon looks big and bright because it is so close to Earth compared to the faraway stars and planets. It is about 238,900 miles, or 384,000 kilometers away. The moon makes no light of its own to shine. It is bright in the night sky because it reflects the sun's light. It is about 1/4 the size of Earth. It is made up of rock and dust. There is no air or sign of light. So the moon is about 2,000 miles in diameter and about 6,800 miles around. Earth is about 8,000 miles in diameter and about 25,000 miles around. So you can see these are pointing the sunlight, and it's hitting this side of the Earth, which we've already learned about. And then whatever goes around the sun or the Earth hits the moon, and that's the part of the moon that's going to get lit up. So that's what we see of the moon, is what the sun is actually reflecting on. So the word reflect means to bounce off and refers to light, heat, and or energy. So What is the moon reflecting? On the previous page, the author described the moon as big and bright. Why does the moon look so big and bright? And is the moon bigger or smaller than the Earth? And how do you know? Most astronomers and other scientists think our moon formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Some believe something collided with Earth that tossed out a cloud of rock and debris. While orbiting around Earth, the rock and debris came together to form the moon. So astronomers study planets, their moons, and the stars. An orbit is the path of one object around another. So what is an orbit? And what is another example of one object orbiting another that we have already learned about in this unit? In ancient times, people thought the moon was a powerful god or goddess. The Romans called their moon goddess Luna. In Greece, the moon goddess was Selene, who rode through the sky in a silver chariot. Some American Indian nations believed the moon and the sun were brother and sister gods. Stories and legends were told about the shapes and shadows that showed on the moon's surface. Some people said the moon showed a man's face, the man in the moon, who was imprisoned there for stealing. Others told of moon demons living there. The moon is Earth's only natural satellite. It takes about 1 month for the moon to travel around the Earth. So again, you see the sunlight coming in from the left and shining on this half of the Earth, reflecting off of this half of the moon. And it is showing that the moon orbits around the Earth. A satellite is an object orbiting around another larger one. So how long does it take for the moon to travel around the Earth? The moon makes one complete rotation for each complete trip around Earth. Thus, the same side of the moon is always facing the Earth. So, what are some facts that we have learned about the moon in this text so far? So, one of the tasks that you're going to have listed, actually I don't think it is listed on your paper, but is to create facts about the moon. Just kind of a sheet jotting down the different things that we have learned so far about the moon. So this is a task that we would have done together. It was a cumulative task or collaborative task that we would have done as a class and made an anchor chart. So these are some of the things that I went ahead and added to our facts. But this could also include other facts like the moon makes no light, and that's because the moon actually reflects light from the sun. The moon is smaller than the Earth. The moon is made up of rocks and dust. The moon has craters, mountains, and valleys. The moon is the Earth's only natural satellite. It takes the moon about a month to travel around the Earth. The moon orbits the Earth. There's no air on the moon. The gravity is different. So anything that you already know or that you have learned about the moon in this text, just add that to your chart. This chart and the facts that you write down and think about are going to help you with your task today. So parents, there will be a picture of this chart in Class Dojo. All right, so we are going to skip over here. All right. Some night sky gazers and astronomers can get a close-up view of the moon by looking through binoculars. Others look through telescopes. Some huge telescopes are used at observatories. So it's showing you an example of the binoculars there, the telescope, and then the big observatory that uses a huge telescope. So how do people observe the moon? And look at that word, observatory. What do you think observatory is? What do you think that would mean? A close-up view of the moon's surface shows dark patches astronomers call plains or seas. Other areas are covered with craters, mountains, and valleys. The moon's craters were formed between 3.5 and 4.5 billion years ago when meteors pounded its surface. So the author describes a close-up view of the moon in the text and in the picture. But the text also says that the moon is really far away. So how do you think people are able to get that close of a view of the moon? How were the craters formed on the moon? How does knowing how they're formed help us understand what a crater looks like? For centuries, people have wanted to know more about our moon. In 1959, the Russian spacecraft Luna 3 transmitted to Earth the first pictures of the far side or back of the moon. There aren't as many dark areas on that side as on the side we see from Earth. So there is the front and the back, so you can see the difference. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy made a commitment to put Americans on the moon before the end of the decade. At first, many American unmanned spacecraft were sent. Pictures were taken, then Surveyor 1 landed on the moon in 1966. It sent back information about the moon's surface. The first manned orbit of the moon was made by Apollo 8 astronauts in 1968. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin of the Apollo 11 mission became the first men to walk on the moon. There were 5 more Apollo landings on the moon. The last one, Apollo 17, was in 1972. The astronauts did experiments and gathered samples. Astronomers and other scientists were able to learn more about the history and nature of our moon. So on these last few pages, how have astronomers learned information about the moon? And why do you think people wanted to send spacecrafts and astronauts to the moon? On a clear night when the moon is in the sky, gaze up at it. We are still learning more about our closest neighbor. The moon. So why do you think the author says our closest neighbor? What else do you want to know about the moon? And what kind of scientific tools would you need to find out those things about the moon? So let's think about all the information we just learned about the moon and maybe some of these facts. You could add more facts to your sheet. Like the moon has craters, mountains, and valleys. We read that in that second part. Spacecrafts have taken photos of the moon. Astronauts have traveled to the moon. The backside is not as dark. So add any details that you would like to your facts about the moon sheet.